Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Sport YouTube channel. This is the weekly questions, perspectives, and maybe answers, and we call it that. We used to call it a Q&A, but Catherine and I have come to the realization that we don't know all the answers and never really had claim to, so it was kind of false branding to call it questions and then definitely answers. So this segment of our content is where we talk about things that have been requested from the community and wider sources, and then we share our perspectives on it, hoping that you can find some answers within those perspectives. So it's not to say that we have all of the answers, because not one person does, but some of the perspectives we have may give you the answers to the questions that you're looking for. And I hope that makes sense. And in this video, we're going to be looking at a question that was raised in the community by, let me just make sure I've got this, by Julian, 123 and Julian has asked us about self-trust, and it says that it's something that he struggled with. He says that there's an inner voice or place where I think I know what to do, but I don't do it. I look externally for the answers, and this is a super hard topic. I think it's kind of related to making choices that reflect my hopes and not always my fears. It's also about the comfort zone, and asking a lot of things about being hostage to his emotions. So it's all kind of tied in together. He's also asking about procrastination. So there's quite a bit on Julian's mind, and that's something that resonates with me. So that's what we're going to get in, and Catherine too. It's something we're going to get into, and give you some tips and our perspectives on how to start trusting that voice in your head, and how not to be tied down to the negative emotions. So that was an intro. Catherine, how you doing?
I'm good, yeah. In the hump day shirt per usual.
Classic.
Because it's
continuity.
It's midweek and we're here to share our insights and perspectives that, like we said, we're still learning about in real time. So we're here to learn with you. Whatever we're talking about here is just information from where we're at.
Yeah.
Experientially.
I like that word here. So let's talk about self-trust. So I think a good question to start with is, like, maybe Catherine, you could give an example of, that inner voice, at least in your mind, maybe where it's caused you not to trust yourself in the past. Do you have any examples of that?
Well, with this concept in mind, I like to think about how we are creatures of homeostasis. So we're seeking a state of healing, a state of consistency. And when there's a voice that is speaking opposite of that, is speaking outside of healing and of being in a good place, so to say, then you kind of know that there are more than one inner voices playing out in your head. And so it is difficult to know which one to trust, so to say, because one's telling you to stay here and the other one's telling you to go over there. And when there's two different voices or several different voices going on in your head, how do you trust that voice? Which one is it that you are listening to? And the one that's bringing healing, sometimes it's not always bringing the most positive emotions and the positive actions to take, or not seemingly positive, but create only positive results for you. I mean, we tend to think that any decision can be turned to our betterment in this household, that whatever happens to us, like, we tend to see the bright side of it, the silver lining, so to say. But when you are making decisions of, like, did you get what I'm saying in this?
I did until the last part.
Oh, okay.
So in terms of, like, I like what you said about the different voices in the decision making. So to give an example would be, I used to really struggle with getting out of bed. That was where I had indecision and had no trust whether I was tired or lazy. So it would be like, one voice would be like, well, get up at 6 o'clock. And then the other voice would be like, oh, no, just lie until 8. And then the other one was like, oh, let's try 7:30. And I used to get caught in those voices and caught in that decision to where I just didn't even trust any of them. So is that what you mean?
Yeah. And it's like the one that seems, and then it's like, well, which one is the most favorable? Because
which one is the what?
Most favorable, because it's like, oh, well, this one's trying to make me the most productive, and get me up early so I can do all of these things in your example, where the other one's looking out for my rest and making sure I get enough sleep and doesn't really care. And, it's like all of these intentions going on in play. And so I understand it is difficult to trust one voice or another.
So how would you start to do that? Though? How would you start to learn to trust that? Or which one would you like out of all of them? How would you start to trust?
I think it's the one that I hear the most consistently in its purest form. I would say the one that's just looking out for my purest intentions. And like, I usually associate it with love. What's the most loving thing that I can do for myself in this decision? And usually that helps me decide, because I can tell when I'm, for in your example, oh, well, I can tell when I'm tired, or when maybe I'm just waking up depressed or in a certain state of being. And realistically, I do want to get up and see the day. And so
Yeah, so
it
like,
comes back to love for me as the emotion that I'm seeking.
yeah. So like over time, well, this is what's happened for me, because I did start to do that, to build trust with, because there are a lot of inner voices and they're all going to cause different emotions. So what I used to ask myself was, and I still do this now, but this is what started to turn the tide, would be like that question, like, what would I do if this was out of love for me? What would I do? And then you hear, like, I used to hear multiple responses, but the one of them, that the response that made me feel like, that's the one, like, and I felt like, that's the one that makes the most quote unquote sense and loves me the most. And over time, what I found is that it gets easier to choose that voice, and the other voices start to fade away. So for example, this morning I woke up and I knew I was tired when I got up, but I got up anyway, went, looked after the dog, drank some tea, but then I was like, man, I'm really slapped here, I'm really tired, I need to go back to bed. And I never used to be able to trust that decision, because I'd have all of these voices going on, the ones that were like, oh, you're not doing enough, you're going to fall behind, you need to go make more money, you need to do all these things. But those voices aren't as loud as they used to be, because I started to learn, I started to take the most loving option. So you kind of train yourself out of it, or at least that's what I've found. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And it brings us back to like all these different voices are parts of us, or different characters that are playing out in our head at any given point. And it's like, well, then which one is you? And there could be two of you in any given instance. And the way that I like to explain it for myself, and Joshua finds this useful as well, it's that I've got a child in me and a parent in me at any given point. And it's like, oh, well, what type of parent do I want to be for myself? And
Good question.
that's usually where the purest and most loving comes out, because when you're deciding what woman you want to be in the world or what man you want to be in the world, like if you had an offspring of a plant or an animal or an actual baby, it's like, oh, well, what man am I for that creature? I would be the same type of, I would try to treat myself with the same. And then when you don't, but it's like, if you had one father figure and you're not sure like what type of, like, I'm speaking for Julian because Julian's a man, but if like I didn't know what type of woman to be in the world, and I was confused about that and like how to raise myself and how to be there for myself, then I wouldn't know how to make the right decision. But through learning to
I like that.
mother myself.
Yeah, and I think what happens has definitely happened to me, and I think most of the work I've done has been with men. But what happened to me is, and this is why I never trusted myself or any of the decisions, and did what Julian was talking about, where just procrastinate, put off the things I wanted to do, is because, like, I really love my dad and he's a great dude, but he wasn't there when like my mum and dad got divorced when I was younger, so I didn't know, I didn't have like a code. I didn't get to see every single day what type of man he was or what type of man I wanted to be. So when you don't have that in place, then it is harder to trust yourself, because you're kind of basing everything off emotion. You don't have like a guide, or like, this is why people choose religious texts to follow, scriptures to follow, because then they have like a set of guidelines of that they can trust maybe more than themselves. And for me, that's what I just started to do, was just create certain, like a code of conduct for myself, kind of like a contract. And then within that code of that contract, in action it and executing it, then and then getting the desired results, i.e. the reality that I wanted, then it really started to build trust in myself, because you trust in something that you've created and then tested. So that, again, I'm just going to keep the congruency with the example, is that once I made that decision to or like so what I do with the morning now is, if the dog gets me up the first time to be fed, then I can go back to sleep. But when he gets me up the second time, and if the first time is after 6, then I have to stay up. But if it's before 6, then I can go back to bed until about 6, or any time after that when he wakes me up. But when he wakes me up the second time, in this like code of conduct with myself, I just get up with him. And then that's it. And then it's just like black and white, signed, sealed, delivered. It's much easier. And then I started to trust myself more, because the days that I am actually tired after that, I can be like, okay, well, I'm actually tired. I'm going to go back to sleep for a bit more, like today. Does that make sense? Having that,
Definitely.
creating that framework for yourself and giving yourself the permission to do so, especially if, I don't know, personal situations, but if you haven't had that father figure in that way to show you guidelines, daily guidelines of simple, small tasks, like I didn't, it's not banging any shots to anyone's parents or anything, just is the circumstance. It really helped me.
I did something similar with the code of conduct. I wrote out a list of things that I just think were useful in a day that I wanted to represent, no matter what I was raised to believe or what other people have told me. Like, it's not always about the external advice of what everyone says. It's like, what resonates with me and what have I split tested to really know works within my life, and trust that. Like writing, oh, well, I know that when I eat these foods, I just feel better. So this is just in my code of conduct, and I just trust that. Or I know when I make these decisions, my life is just better. So I'm just going to make that decision. And that's kind of how I've started to build my trust over time. And I feel like that voice, because I've split tested what benefits me and what doesn't benefit me. And then I follow that trust and code of conduct, so to say.
And I like that over time, because it's definitely a relationship that you're building with yourself, and it is kind of testing, because there's going to be there's going to be times where, and these are like the questions that Julian asked, Kate kind of prefaced, and they do tie together, because the next one, where it was like how to exit your comfort zone, this could be doing it, like by learning to test a new voice. Because, for example, most people have lots of really good ideas in their head about things they want to do, but they never actually just try it. They never actually see, like they want trust in it, like extrinsically, explicitly straight away. But I think it's more of a case of testing it to see if there is trust there, because you can get ideas and then they actually don't turn out to be the ones for you. But unless you test it, you never know. So to leave your comfort zone, that's how you can start to, gain inner trust with yourself. Because if you have a voice in your head that's like telling you stuff that seems to be good for you, well, why not just listen to it for a minute and just do the actions it's telling you, and then just see where they take you. And over time, you might be like, huh, this is cool. So for example, I never used to trust myself on the phone. I never used, really, that's what it came down to, didn't I? I would not ring people because I didn't really trust myself. I had fear around it or whatever. But then when I started to get that voice in my head of like, oh, just give him a call. Just give him a call, Josh. Be okay. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe he's right. Fucking hell. Pick up the phone, go through it, and then get that feedback of like, oh, it was actually okay. It was fine, actually. It was really good. And then you create that feedback loop, and then the trust builds from trust. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, because it's the confidence over time. It's the memories of I've achieved something, and if you think about at this point in your life, you've probably, any given person has had to have like exited their comfort zone at least once. Everyone has to do school speeches, right, in front of someone else. I guess if you're homeschooled, that doesn't really happen. But
that was in my comfort zone. That.
Oh, okay. Well, that was not in my comfort zone, was to go up and speak in front of the class. But I did it anyways. And if you just collect those little instances in your life where you did make difficult decisions and you did push yourself out of your comfort zone and you did something that you've never done before, you can kind of assert to yourself like, oh, I have done this before and I can do it again and I'm gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Because that phrase is really powerful. No matter what happens, I've been all right and I'll continue to be all right. I'll continue to survive. Whatever I'm afraid of is imaginary outside of this comfort zone. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's not a popular rhetoric in the world right now, but you gotta train yourself to do hard things, I think. And you gotta be willing to like test yourself. I don't know what I say it's not popular. I don't feel like that's a popular thing because everybody wants everything to be easy and convenient and all that. But honestly, to learn to trust yourself, it maybe isn't easy and convenient. And when I look at the self-trust I've got, like I really do think that if I give my word to something, unless and I'm getting better at this and it's changing over time, but to the best of my ability, I will keep it. But that's just because I've tested and I've done what I believe to be hard things. And if there's anybody out there, an example of this to learn self-trust is do a like a charity boxing event. I always give that as an example because it did so much for me. It built so much self-trust that I was like, I'm going to do this, and in 10 weeks I'm going to have a fight in the ring. And then I did it, and it was well hard. But then after it, I've got that self-trust where I was like, damn, I really did do that. And if I did that, like, so that's one way you can build self-trust as well, is to start testing yourself like that. And maybe with small things, maybe it's like, I'm going to read 5 pages of a book a day for a week. Test yourself and then start to build the trust that, well, I actually did that. You see what I mean? And that's another way I've built self-trust.
Yeah, self-trust, and it pushes you out of your comfort zone because you're doing what you've never done before. And that's what I was trying to talk to you about before, is that stress in general has been made the enemy in our modern world, but stress and putting yourself out of the comfort zone is absolutely just what happens. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not like I'm always just like, oh my gosh, I'm recording. This is the best thing ever. It's like when I go live, I do feel like I'm a wolf, I'm recording myself and I'm putting myself out there in the world. And every single time it brings a certain level of like, oh, I am pushing myself a
Yeah.
little bit further. Like I am showing up another week. I am talking on the camera once again about
Yeah.
the things that I think about and live
Yeah.
with. And when you push that envelope each time, it does just take you one step further to
Definitely,
where
yeah.
you're going.
Yeah, it's like a muscle. I think self-trust is a muscle, and you have to train it, and you have to, set parameters for it and track it. That's another thing as well. Track if you're doing what you say you're going to do. Because if you're not doing what you say you're going to do, that will actually limit self-trust. That will make it worse. So the worst thing you can do when you're challenging yourself is make it too big, I think.
Yeah.
You got to make it conquerable to build the self-trust, and over time you just make the things slightly bigger. But having that
Yeah.
framework, I think, would really help.
And another thing that I think would be really useful is that the thing that you're trying to do, or the things you're trying to do, and we like to map out exactly what will happen, right? Well, like, oh, when we do A, B will happen,
And I'll get C.
and I'll get C, and then it's we like to project the future, and it's good to play out those scenarios. That's just us being social creatures, just contriving like, oh, well, if I do this, this probably will happen. But outside of that, we have to release any expectations, first of all, because we don't exactly know how it's going to play out. But then on top of that, play out the worst case scenario in your head. What is the worst thing that could happen if when you do what you say you're going to do? And then be okay with that worst case scenario and be like, okay, well, that's the worst case scenario in my head about what can happen here. And if that doesn't happen, if that does or doesn't happen, then it is what it is. And you kind of just move forward from there, because then you kind of are building yourself up to, oh, is it really that bad? Is the worst case scenario really that the worst that could ever happen to me?
Yeah, and that's a way to, because tied into this is like feeling hostage to your emotions and how to stop avoiding those negative emotions. That builds self-trust too, because if you can face those tough parts of yourself and be okay with them and just experience, and again, it's just something that's been lost. It's not seemingly okay to be not okay now. It's everyone, you gotta be okay all the time, feeling good all the time. It's like, well, bad shit happens in life. Life can be really difficult. And if you keep avoiding those negative emotions, they're not going anywhere. They're just getting suppressed and pushed down further. And they're going to come out anyway. So what I really think is good is to just face them and just sit in them and have enough self-trust that you're going to get through them and they're not going to last forever. And if
Yeah.
you can do that and sit in them, they do lose energy and you can move on from it.
Mhm. And I think something that's I've been realizing more than ever is that when these negative emotions come up, it feels like it's a younger version of me coming up every single time. And the younger version of me is looking for safety, is looking for freedom, is looking for assurance from the adult version of me, of the mother in me. And so to keep avoiding those negative emotions is to keep telling your inner child, like, shh, no, I don't want to hear it. Nope, we're not going to do it. We're not doing it. We're not going there. We're not doing this or that.
Which may have happened if your parents did that. A lot of parents do that.
Yeah. So I think it's like, oh, this person, this feeling, this part of me, this has age and has character, is like calling to me for help. And I just got to go help it. I've got to be there for it. And yeah, it's something that, as well as today, I even just read that like crying or being sad is considered like a negative emotion in our world. But is it? Crying is how we let go, is how we release, is how we become lighter.
Yeah.
And I even have a Frankel quote that I wrote down today.
Shout out to Frankel in the chat.
For Man's Search of Meaning. He says,
and I quote,
"But there was no need to be ashamed of tears, for tears bore witness that a man had the greatest of courage, the courage to suffer." And we all suffer in our lives one way or another. Suffering is inevitable, seemingly, in the human experience. But when you have the courage to go through that and to just suffer temporarily for long-term gains, because like you said, Julian, making decisions for long-term benefit. It is anything that you're feeling negative is temporary. It will not last forever, and it can get moved past.
Definitely. Yeah, and that really helped me a lot, that quote, because I felt very self-conscious about crying in the past and very self-conscious about, and losing trust in myself, because I'm like, why do I feel so sad? Why do I feel so lost? Why do I feel like I don't know what decision to make, or I don't know where to go? And then because I thought that was all my responsibility, I didn't trust myself. But then when I was like, maybe that's normal, and then just, I guess, suffered with those things and felt the suffering, they kind of just went, and I was like, it's way better. And then way better, and then just started to like have more trust in the things. And one thing that I'm currently working on is having enough self-trust that I'm doing enough, because we're very action-based creatures, especially in America. It's all about like doing more action and doing. But usually that's because you don't trust that it's actually going to work out for you, and you don't have enough self-trust that it's going to work. But then if you can start to be more patient, just breathe a little bit and have trust that it is okay and is going to work through and it is going to work out for you, and have that self-trust, I've found way more peace in life. And I want that for other people. So maybe try it again. This is perspectives and maybe answers. So anything, we've spoke a lot now, so we're going to be wrapping this up in a minute, but anything that we've shared here, like, we'll just quickly recap. So Kate, do you want to try give a 30-second summary? We spoke about a lot, but do you want to give a 30-second summary?
Sort out the voices in your head, figure out who each one of them are, and just be honest with it yourself, and own up to the fact that maybe you have figured out how to be a bigger, like, have gone through a lot, and you have figured things out, and you have achieved things, and have that recognition and be like, oh, I have done that, and I have done that for other people, so I can do this for myself, because I know what that voice is, and I trust that voice to speak to other people and give them advice. So I'm going to trust that voice with the advice that it gives me, because whatever I fear is imaginary. And if I just push myself out of my comfort zone, I may suffer, but the suffering will only be temporary. And I will move into a new life experience as long as I follow these belief systems about myself and just build myself to it.
Love it. And just remember that this is like a muscle. Self-trust is a muscle. So if you haven't been to the gym for 10 years, the first workout's going to be the hardest, but then it gets easier every single time. And this is the exact same way, is that if you have really low levels of self-trust, start small and build yourself up, and then just push and incrementally grow. And as always, the call to action is, if you need help with any of that, especially figuring out the parts and hearing the voices and understanding who to trust, who to follow, what actions to take, that's why we have the support service, the tickets. Just raise a ticket. There'll be a link below this. If you're in the community, very easy to do. Just click speak to the team.
Just be like, I need a voice call. I need to talk about this stuff,
and
because
we'll be like, hello.
it's a lot easier to give the remedy in person,
so
to say.
All right, dope. Anything else, Catherine, before we jump off?
No, thank you for anyone who's watched this. Thank you, Julian, for the question. We really appreciate it. We hope that you found this useful.
And if you have any perspectives that you want to share on this, you know, these are not we ain't the oracles. We're just trying to do our best and share what worked for us. If you have anything that's worked for you, please leave it in the comments or get in touch and we can chat about it. But other than that, have a wonderful rest of your day. It's been hump day here, and we appreciate you all.
Much love.
Bye.